Hey there. It is time for story time. And this will be an interesting one. I'm not quite sure how this one will go because hi, I'm Dr. Bird. I like to talk about biblical passages that touch on and involve the topics of sex and the relationships we call marriage, and some of the stories that sometimes involve physical abuse that involves intimate body parts. I prefer not to say sexual assault because sex to me is a good thing and positive thing, and I don't like juxtaposing it with abuse or assault. So, physical abuse that involves inappropriate things, body parts, harm involving those things. So, here we are. I am working through the book of Genesis, and today the chapter is we're at the end of chapter 11. I actually yesterday's Does the Bible Tell You So series weekly video was on the beginning of chapter 11 of Genesis. It doesn't really involve any of my topics for this series. So, but that the Tower of Babel is one that I am constantly kind of just saddened by the way so many people are taught to read that story. So that was why I chose to do that for that series. So if you're interested in the Tower of Babel story, I'd encourage you to go check that out. It's in the playlist Does the Bible Tell You So on my channel, my YouTube channel. So that leaves us at the end of chapter 11, and there are some interesting things at the end of chapter 11 that have to do with marriage and sex, actually indirectly sex. So I do want to talk about it. And before I read through the passage that is relevant, so the relevant passage for today, I'd like to ask you to consider two questions. The first is I'd like to ask you to think about what message, what kinds of signals is this passage sending you or anyone else who might grow up on these kinds of passages? What message is being sent about the relationship we call marriage? Okay. What are the messages you're getting about marriage? And what I mean by that is, if you're a male, if you identify as male, what are you being told? What kinds of things are you being taught to expect about marriage? If you are female identifying, you grow up hearing these, what kinds of things are you being taught to expect about this relationship we refer to as marriage? And I keep making the qualification that we refer to as marriage because the Hebrew Bible doesn't have a verb to marry, and it doesn't have designations for people to make a distinction between before being married and after the way we do. And so it's really just men and women, and then men and women, not husband and wife. But we keep having our English translations tell us that these people are husbands and wives. And that's really frustrating to me, given how much that then influences the way we think about things. So for today, what messages are you receiving? What are you being taught to expect or maybe to live into according to this? And then the other question is, and I think this plays out in a lot of parts of biblical passages, or if we kind of read a passage and reflect on what's being said, we might see quite a few parallels to today in this way. And that is, I'd love for you to think about your family or maybe some of your friends and reflect on what are their expectations for the males in a family, the male siblings, right, in the younger generation, that they are more prominent? Do they get more attention in terms of the story, the narratives that the family is passing along? Do the sons get more attention in general? Do they get more parental attention, consciously or not? Does it matter more what the boys are doing than what the young women are doing? Is there a tradition of passing things along to the eldest son that maybe because it has to do with the family name, they get things that the oldest daughter might not get, or if the oldest sibling is a daughter? I hope my question makes sense, but I'd love for you to think about either your own family families, or people that maybe if you're a part of a community, that meets regularly, what do you see happening there? Are people more proud of what boys are accomplishing than what girls are accomplishing? I think all these things are related to when we see over and over and over again, stories are told that talk about and that center not just the men as patriarchs of the family, but also the sons. And it's like daughters are kind of this little extra thing on the periphery or something. Again, I know that we're talking about an ancient text here. And so I'm not trying to judge or, say something nasty about ancient ideas and ways of doing things. But the point for me is they're not so ancient because we're still being informed, or communities, faith communities, and cultures are still being informed by this way of thinking, partly because these are still the texts that people turn to. It's part of it. I know it's not the only part. Okay, so those are the questions, right? What are you being taught? And do you see some parallels today in today's world, your world today? Okay. So I got my Hebrew Bible out, actual Hebrew Bible out, to look at some of the nouns involved here, because I wanted to make sure I was representing correctly what we're seeing in this. I'm going to read this, and it's going to probably feel really weird because it is a genealogy, but that's kind of the point, as well as it's like men. This is another example of men becoming fathers miraculously. Okay. Actually, we talked about this a couple days ago, and someone posted a comment to afterwards. So it was when we talked about Genesis 4 and 5, and someone made a comment that they were into genealogy. And yeah, we, even as recently as 100 years ago, you'll see that, the son, a male is named, and he marries so-and-so's daughter. She isn't named, but her father is, and he has such and such children, right? So it's it's a great example of kind of what I'm trying to highlight for you. It isn't just an ancient way of thinking. And then maybe more recently than this last 100 years ago, we might still do it differently, but is it entirely fair, right? Just things to think about. So here we go. This picks up in chapter 11 of Genesis, right after the story about the Tower of Babel. Again, I encourage you to go check out that video if you're interested in that story. So this is in verse 10. I'm going to read to the end of the chapter, and then I have some visuals to kind of to show you the family tree that we're talking about. And then I'm going to include the next two generations after Abraham, just to kind of drive home some interesting things about family, okay? And really about marriage, since that's what I'm trying to focus on. So chapter 11, verse 10. These are the descendants of Shem. Remember, Shem is the oldest son of Noah, and Shem is the one through whom Abraham is an ancestor to Abraham. So when Shem was 100 years old, he became the father of Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. So everybody then knew where that was. And Shem lived after the birth of Arpachshad 500 years and had other sons and daughters. When Arpachshad had lived 35 years, he became the father of Shelah. And Arpachshad lived after the birth of Shelah 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he became the father. Are you noticing this? People become fathers. Became the father of Eber. And Shelah lived after the birth of Eber 403 years and had other sons and daughters. And when Eber had lived 34 years, he became the father of Peleg. And Eber lived after the birth of Peleg 430 years and had other sons and daughters. If you're starting to zone out, please don't. I'd like you to think about this is important for telling people stories and their identities. Please don't just zone out. I'd like you to think about what this tells you that this is in there on some level, okay? When Peleg had lived 30 years, he became the father of Reu. And Peleg lived after the birth of Reu 209 years and had other sons and daughters. When Reu had lived 32 years, he became the father of Serug. And Reu lived after the birth of Serug 207 years and had other sons and daughters. When Serug had lived 30 years, he became the father of Nahor. And Serug lived after the birth of Nahor 200 years and had other sons and daughters. And Nahor lived When he had lived 29 years, he became the father of Terah. And Nahor lived after the birth of Terah 119 years and had other sons and daughters. When Terah had lived 70 years, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Abram, or Abram, whichever way you want to say it, is the key guy here, right? Now, these are the descendants of Terah. Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran was the father of Lot. Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his birth, in Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor took women. The English I'm reading says wives, of course, right? The name of Abram's woman was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's woman was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Wait, what? So that's why I wanted to do the visual for you here in just a second. Now, Sarai was barren. She had no child. I do also want to point out this is an interesting thing because there's a story in the next chapter that we're going to talk about tomorrow where Abram and Sarah lie to the Pharaoh about being brother and sister. And in chapter 20, they have the same story just with the king of Gerar. And in the second version, they're very clear that they are actually brother and sister or half siblings. It isn't clear the first time, and it doesn't matter to me personally. It's more a thing about when people try to focus in on something and make the main point. There are two different versions here. It is not clear at all. In fact, if they had been brother and sister, it would have been stated. Just saying. Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's woman, and they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan, or Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah lived in Haran. A couple things I want to highlight. One, before we go back and look at the genealogy. So when it says Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, I figured that wasn't actually in the Hebrew. And actually, it's really interesting. I haven't spent time looking at this usage or this way of labeling a woman, but it's actually Kala. That Sarai is Abram's woman, his Kala, and this Kalal, or so it comes from the root word Kalal, and she's called the Kalti. So anyway, the way the Hebrew works is she is Abram's all. So this word, the root of that word, either means whole or all or something that completes something, which is kind of interesting that she's being called this, that she is the thing that completes Abram. Do with that what you want. That's kind of interesting. Okay, I'm going to do, let's see, I'm not looking at comments. Sorry about that. No questions or comments yet. So definite inheritance for the oldest sons and their oldest sons. Who cares about the other children? Exactly. Okay, I want to present this. Let me see if this works. Nope, that's not what we want. Okay, we're going to back out of that. Let's try this again. Gonna share screen. There we go. Okay, let's see how this goes. Let's try this and that. So thanks for bearing with me. I'm just trying to figure all the things out. And I don't know. There we go. Okay. So that's what it looks like. Okay, I don't know how we do this. I'm just gonna go back over here and do, I think I can do a slideshow. Let's see what happens. That works. How exciting. Okay, thanks for bearing with me. Okay, so when we look at, here we have Terah, who was just talked about, right, at the end of chapter 11, and we don't know Terah's woman's name, just so that's why there's an X. If the woman who helps to make this important son come about isn't named, then I give them an X. Okay, that's how I mark the spot here. So Tara had 3 children. Oh, I didn't notice that the all the sorry, the spacing is off. I didn't look at that in when I put it in Drive. So I hope you'll just bear with me there. Haran is the 3rd child, Nahor is the 2nd child, and Abram is the 1st. Okay, Sarai is named as Abram's woman, and um, sorry about that, folks. These 3 names are supposed to be over here under. So I guess it works okay since it's Haran. Haran's 3 children, right? If you can track with me this way, Haran and whose woman is not named, and these 2 have these 3 children. Okay. Gosh, I will pay better attention next time. um, so if Milcah was over here where she should have been, Milcah, so Haran's daughter Milcah becomes Nahor's woman, so his wife in our terms. So he marries his niece. Is everybody tracking with that? Right? Milcah would be over here if I had checked the spacing. Milcah, Nahor marries his niece. Okay. Again, I am not trying to judge. I am simply trying to highlight for you. Okay. What's that song? Is it Jeff Foxworthy or whoever does that song about I am my own grandmother? Like it's kind of like, it's kind of a joke about certain communities that are a little bit inbred. It's probably crazy weird that I just said all that. But anyway, I'm just trying to highlight it for you. Let's be honest about what's going on. Okay. So this has gotten a little messy since the spacing is off. So Lot, Iscah, and Milcah are supposed to be over here. I wonder what would happen if I fixed that really quickly, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make you all just suffer through it. Bethuel and Laban are the 2 children of Nahor and Milcah. Okay, Milcah and Nahor have 2 children, Laban and Bethuel. Their women, wives, are not named anywhere. And these 2, now, oh, this isn't going to work. Let me see. Let me see what I can do here. I'm going to come back over here. Yeah, that was awkward. I wonder how quickly I can do this. Since you all are live, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to see if I can fix that because that was just too much. Okay. Let's see if I can fix that very quickly. Come on. Oh, it's going to take some time because I'm doing StreamYard right now. I'm sorry, folks. Let's hang in there with me. Chat, talk amongst yourselves, maybe, talk amongst yourselves. Let's see what's happening here on the spacing. It is having a hard time bringing it up for me. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. All these things I'm learning about doing this, a lot about presenting specifically, whether or not we're live. Okay. Okay. So we'll do that. We'll do this. We'll do that. And this. Okay. I'm getting there. Okay, we're so close. And this. Okay. So close. So close. Hang in there with me, folks. Talk amongst yourselves, if you don't mind. Talk amongst yourselves. All right, let's do this. Ha. Okay. Right. So close. That. Not. So very close. Okay. 2 more. We're done. And then we're there. Okay. Okay. Very close. Look at that. Aha. And then that. is not what. Let's see what happened here. Mhm. Okay. Let me see what happened there. This will make so much more sense. Okay. It really will. Thank you for bearing with me. Not that you had a choice, right? Yeah, you didn't. So there's that. Okay. This will be so much better. All right. Here we go. All right, there we have it. So you can see, um, yeah, better lined up. There we go. So here we go. So Milcah becomes Nahor's woman. So Nahor marries his niece. Okay. And then Nahor and Milcah have two sons, Laban and Bethuel, right? And Bethuel and his unnamed woman have a daughter named Rebecca, right? And then Rebecca becomes Abram and Sarah are renamed Abraham and Sarah, and Abram has a child with Hagar. We'll talk about that in a couple days. And then God says, no, Sarah's really going to be the one to give you a child. And so that child is Isaac. Abram sends somebody to go find Isaac a woman. Someone goes and finds Rebecca. So Isaac's own cousin once removed, right? Second cousin once removed? Cousin once removed. No, yeah, first cousin once removed. So he marries Rebecca, okay? And didn't straighten this one out. So Laban then has two daughters, Leah and Rachel. You're probably very familiar with them. Isaac and Rebecca have twin sons, Esau and Jacob. That's the story where Rebecca, gangs up with Jacob teams up with Jacob to gang up on Isaac and Esau, trick them out of the inheritance. And so Rebecca has become Isaac's woman. They have twins, Esau and Jacob. Jacob then acquires Rebecca's first cousins, right? So as his two women, right? So Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel are both cousins, as well as mother-in-law, daughter-in-law kind of relationship. Interesting. Again, we don't need to dwell on it. What's being said? What's being communicated about marriage? When people want to talk about turn to the Bible for guidance on marriage, I always want to ask them to look at this family tree, because this family tree is all kinds of things that we say no to today. But these 5 people, Jacob having sex with Bilhah and Zilpah, Rachel and Leah, these 5 people produce the 12 sons who become the heads of the tribes of Israel, sort of, close enough, right? So we don't have any of the 3 monotheistic religions without polygamy, or actually polygyny with an N, because it's multiple wives, not just multiple spouses. With polygyny, incestuous relationships, right? And several of them going on here within just 3 generations. I don't want to talk about what's happening genetically speaking with these folks, if this were actually true historically speaking. But biblical marriage, I hear people talk about biblical marriage, and when they say that, they usually mean one man, one woman. It needs to be procreative, no divorce, and it's sacred. It's sacred like Christ in the church is sacred. And I address all 4 of those passages in context in my book. When I hear someone say biblical marriage, I think of marriages in the Bible. And that's what the next 3 chapters in my book actually address, is things like this, what marriages actually look like in the Bible. And then there are a couple other chapters at the end of the book that address things that still affect the way people think about marriage. So when we look at this family tree of Abram's, or Terah, his fathers, and his children and grandchildren, what kinds of things are you hearing? What kinds of messages are you getting about marriage in the Bible? What kinds of signals are you being sent? Most of the women aren't named, but they're very important for producing children. I want you to think about this because there are people today who are still making choices about what women can do with their bodies, specifically their uteruses. Do you see a connection here between a focus on a woman's role in this fairly central biblical family, the role on the woman's uterus, the possibility that a woman might bring a child into the world? That is her role. And that we have actual legislation in this country that limits a woman's choice or decision about her own body, specifically the uterus. When you talk about women primarily, first and foremost, whichever way you want to look at it, as a baby maker, then she as a human she does not matter. What matters is what happens in that uterus. And this biblical story, these three generations and all the generations after them, people care most about women as bringing sons into the world. And when you put a woman in the position of her primary role on the planet is to bring children into the world, hopefully sons. This is what you're doing, right? There is a line that connects from this way of talking about families. Men become fathers. There is a line that connects that storyline, that belief, to today, when you have men deciding what women can and cannot do with their own bodies. Here's the thing. I realize I got very political and you might not have seen that coming. But here's the thing, folks. I'm actually pro-life and pro-choice. I'm pro-life in the bigger picture understanding of life. Like, how about we put the humans who are already alive first, take them more seriously than the potential ones, because we're already having an issue feeding and clothing and taking care of the humans already on the planet. So I don't think we need to worry about like bringing more in because we're not doing a good job with what's already here. I'm pro-life because I think that means putting the woman first and what is best for her life, right? And I genuinely believe that most people don't even realize that that's what's happening. That this culture is so well informed by a conservative understanding of women that puts women's primary role in the world as being mothers. So that the thing that might happen in her uterus is the most important thing that she could ever possibly do, right? It's so fascinating because it's like people act like we're going to die out as a species if we don't make sure we bring every single child into the world that we can, right? It's a funny thing. No, actually, we've got the opposite problem, folks. We've overpopulated the planet. We should be grateful some people having sex can't produce children. Are you all tracking with my point here, whether or not you agree with me? Because I imagine some people here just got very uncomfortable and are not okay with what I just said, and that's okay. Or some people watching later are going to tear me a new one, and that's okay too. This thing about women are only important as baby makers is loud and clear to me when I read through this. Anyone else? Right? Anyone else seeing that loud and clear? The women aren't even named in these 10 generations, and we get 2 of the women named in the next, and that's because they're within the family. 4 of the women, and that's because they're all within these 3 generations. All the other women came from somewhere else and they're not named, right? Are you tracking with what's going on here, folks? Women are, from the very beginning through to the end of the Christian Bible, women are there is a long, strong tradition of talking about women primarily as baby makers. And when you think about women that way, it leads to this kind of legislation instead of thinking more holistically about the woman first and what is good for her life. Is she able to support another life? That is pro-life, right? Being able to well care for another life you might bring into the world. Being pro-life the language itself is a misnomer when it's used to say only caring about the fetus, right? Pro-life to me says pro-life. So like the lives that are around, let's take care of them well. Let's tend to them, what they do and don't need. Caring about the end of life as much as the beginning of life. Like people don't really do that well either. It's very fascinating to me. So yeah, I'm both pro-life and pro-choice. So what message are you getting from this about marriage? Women are baby makers. There are plenty of passages, by the way, that challenge the idea that women are primarily and foremost best in this world as baby makers, that that's their only role. The problem is these are two different threads that are going on in the same collection of scriptures, and so then the problem or question goes to you, if this is your scriptures, or if you know people for whom it is, which thread are you going to track? You're going to track the one that just talks about primarily about women as baby makers, and all their concerns are about whether or not they've become a mother and producing sons for the man they belong to, right? Or are you going to look at the thread that does all kinds of things with women and acknowledges and honors all kinds of things about women, right? And most communities do one or the other. And so which one are you part of, or which one do people contribute to and endorse and perpetuate, and why? Like, what's going on there for people? Why do you choose to focus on and tell women that they should be primarily baby makers? That is their main role in the world. I mean, that's why I have a hard time going on Twitter. There's so many people out there making these weird conservative these claims about women, that they're focusing, they're Christian, they're faith community people, leaders of these communities, right? And they're tweeting all this just stuff it just makes me so uncomfortable and angry and frustrated and annoyed. It's like, so any comments or questions? Not as many people today chattering, which is fine. Or maybe I lost, whatever. It's all good. What's the message about marriage? And do you know families, either yours or those around you, who do the same thing without even maybe being conscious of it? Privileging men over women, privileging the sons over the daughters. The sons matter more. The family heirlooms are passed down through the sons because we want to make sure it stays with the family name. That kind of stuff, right? It's still alive and well as far as I can tell. And that tracks back to, it's not the only reason, but it tracks back to this kind of stuff, doesn't it? All right. I think we'll wrap up. See some, I like the comment, Carrie Ann, trust the women to raise the decision makers, but don't let her make any decisions about anything. I mean, and I might have, all kinds of interesting things happening here in the chat. I appreciate your chatter, your chit chat. Think I need to wrap it up and let you go. That's my 2 cents on the genealogies. They leave the women out. They plant the seed, the basic idea or seed for thinking of women as primarily important for their uteruses. And that has a very strong tradition over the millennia and is still alive and well in this country. That is why. That is why it is possible to have men making decisions about women's bodies. Right? I mean, have you put it together that way? I'm assuming most of you here who are here at all, like, are kind of with me on this already, that I'm not telling you something you didn't already know. But in case you hadn't put that together, anyone making laws in this country or in a certain state or region that tells another person what they can do with their own body, that comes out of this way of thinking, right? When you don't get to decide what to do with your own body, it's because you're property. You belong to somebody else. Somebody else gets to make that claim for you. Right? Women's uteruses are not all that they are. There's more to a woman than her uterus. Okay, thank you, Captain Sunshine. We'll end on that. I like that little rainbow of love. Okay, thanks for showing up. And if you're watching later and watch all the way to the end, thank you for watching. I hope there was something helpful for you here, something different to maybe nibble on or mull over. And tomorrow we're gonna look at Abraham pimping out Sarah. Yay! All right. See you next time.